Hello, everybody. I'm Zenith Rule, and welcome back to the Disney Debate, where Kat Mac and I talk about Disney products and Disney in general. So how are you doing today, Kat?
I'm feeling very educated. The films we're about to discuss educated me very much. I wouldn't say entertained me quite as much, but I definitely got a good education.
Yeah, we have entered the dark half of the 1940s, where films aren't really entertaining so much as just partly educational, partly boring.
Partly propaganda.
Mostly propaganda.
Yeah, so what we're talking about is we're actually be discussing two movies this time. And they're not directly related to each other, but they have a similar origin, per se.
Mm-hmm. And they're really not enough to carry a full episode on their own, either way, because first we have Saludos Amigos, which is kind of a compilation of 4 cartoons.
Yeah, and this one was, of course, it takes place in South America. It's the first film, probably cartoon, to ever, take place down in South America and show the culture. And it's a pretty bizarre one, I must say.
Yeah, it's an eclectic mix, if anything else. And then we also are talking about Victory Through Airpower, which is a very strange film. If it's not like, Reluctant Dragon strange in the fact that, just what the fuck is going on. It's strange in the fact that this was going to be an actual film, and I don't think it was ever fully theatrically released. But basically what it is, I don't know if this was even intended for adults or for kids or whatever, but it's basically, okay, it gives you a history lesson of aviation, and then says, okay, this is the war. This is how we can win World War II with planes.
Pretty much, yeah. Victory Through Airpower it's partially a propaganda, to talk about how wonderful, airplanes and air power is and how it can be used to win the war, which is going on at the time and everything. And it's done partially through animation and partially through having a real person talk to the audience.
Who is Russian, by the way, which I found a tad funny, considering a few years later the Cold War would begin, and
yes, because Victory Through Airpower actually was a book, and it was written by Alexander P. D. Seversky, and he actually makes an appearance in the film itself, because Disney read this book among all the other stuff that he's read, and he was very impressed with the guy's idea of how to use air power, and he wanted to bring it to the public attention, saying, well, we should, everyone should use this guy's ideas to help us win the war. So I guess his mindset was, the sooner we end this war, the sooner I can get back to making real movies.
And that's the truth. I mean, for the most part, during the wartime, Disney did not make a lot of really big movies. I think the last one they really did was Dumbo, and I don't think Bambi was really a film that they were intended to release during the war.
Yeah, Bambi that was being worked on way before the past couple of movies that we talked about. So, and it was the only one he refused to stop working on once the war started. But his other projects, unfortunately, had to go on hold at the time because, the government deemed that, we're in a war now, we have to keep up morale, so I command you to start making all these war-related cartoons, get the public, really, rooting for the United States and for, supporting our troops and blah, 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 blah.
And the thing is, for the longest time, most of Disney's films had been based on children's books. Snow White, Pinocchio, those were both based on children's books. Mm-hmm. Fantasia was Disney's masterpiece. It was his original idea. But for the most part, it kind of felt like an extension of that, based on a storybook. Even The Reluctant Dragon was based on a book of some sort, even if it was stupid as hell. Dumbo was based on a book. Bambi was based on a book. So all these films up until this point had a common theme of, okay, this is all about like children's fantasy type thing. And then you have Saludos Amigos.
Yeah.
It is the first film other than Fantasia, which is not based on anything. And it's a collection of 4 cartoons. It's them going to South America and saying, oh, this looks cool, let's animate it.
Yes, pretty much. Because they try to mix up real-life camera work by filming the animators and all of them going down to South America and, viewing the culture and the wildlife and the terrains and then incorporating it into the cartoon. So it's kind of, a behind-the-scenes thing, but mixed with the cartoons. And I don't think it works that well, to be honest, because nothing really interesting happens when you watch the animators traveling all around. Because they go to 4 different countries, and true, you get to see, the countries how they are. And at the time, this was a new thing for a lot of people who had never left the United States before, because everyone had their own idea of what Brazil and Chile and Argentina all looked like, sort of something similar to Mexico. But so a lot of people were really taken aback by this. But
yeah, but I mean, they didn't show much of it, and most of it was just like, okay, these narration of them doing mundane things and only slightly relating them to the cartoons that they're going to show later. And think about this for a second. Okay. The Reluctant Dragon was one of Disney's shortest films at 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. Saludos Amigos is 40 minutes. And of that, I think maybe only 32 minutes of that is cartoons. The rest is just them, okay, look at the countryside. It's amazing. This is the culture. This is what happens. And it's not told in an intriguing fashion. Mm-hmm. It's told into... Well, today on the History Channel, we're going to show you the Saludos Amigos. Look at them frolic in the brown country.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, so pretty much it's the artist going from point A to point B. And then you slap a cartoon on top of it.
And some of them are slightly related, I guess. And just not really, though. It seems like an excuse to give the artists a vacation and make a film out of it.
Yes. Well, the original concept for Saludos Amigos, like I said before, that Saludos Amigos and Victory Through Airpower were sort of related in their origins, in the fact that Saludos Amigos was made as a sort of a goodwill project toward South America. Now, at the time when the war was going on, South America hadn't really chosen a side to be on at that point, and as far as I know, wasn't that actively involved in the war. However, there was a couple of leaders that did have ties to Nazi parties. So, in order to sever that and try to get South America on our side, they decided, well, hey, maybe if we make a bunch of cartoons, maybe a full-length movie about South America and how great it is, and bring it to the public's attention, we can get them enough publicity, they can go on our side.
Wow, that's wicked different from the Cold War. If that happened, if they had ties to communist parties, it would be way different. They'd be like, no, they're blacklisted. Get out of here.
Pretty much.
The government is weird, but we're not here to talk about the government today. Right. We're here to talk about these animated shorts. And so, yeah, it's really kind of a history special for most of it, but we have these little animated shorts. So first off, we have Lake Titicaca, which is a very funny name.
Yes.
But this is my least favorite of the cartoons, I would say, because I
wouldn't say that. I mean, I think there's a worse one later on to talk about, but it is definitely lacking. I'll give it that.
I'd say it's the least interesting in the fact that, okay, nothing really happens. It's very loosely based on, what they're talking about with the the leaders, the people who lead expeditions into the mountains on these little, what are they, like alpacas?
I believe so. So.
Oh no, llamas. They're llamas apparently, and I thought everything was alpaca now, but yeah. So they observe this boy who's playing a flute, and riding a llama, and they say, okay. They draw a cartoon where Donald learns how to use the flute to ride on the llama and goes around the place.
Yeah, so, well, real quick, for those of you who don't know, these 4 cartoons all take place in different parts of South America. So Lake Titicaca is located in Peru, and the artists, the first thing they do is they go to Peru, they observe Lake Titicaca, which is actually in a very mountainous region, very high up above sea level, to the point where it's actually a bit hard to breathe up there.
Mm-hmm.
So, after viewing this, they decided, hey, let's do a Donald Duck cartoon about this place. Because,
I just question the logic in this, because Donald Duck is a character very much about his anger. He gets angry at something, and it's usually because he's interacting with Mickey or his nephews. Why would you bring him to South America and say, hey, let's have him ride a llama?
Pretty much, and it doesn't really feel like a Donald Duck cartoon either, because from what I've seen of the Donald Duck cartoons, just showed his mishaps and his adventures going to different places and experiencing different things, and a lot of it is mostly slapstick humor, mostly against him.
Mm-hmm.
So, in this, the whole plot is that Donald Duck is a tourist at Lake Titicaca, and he observes the culture and the people, and takes a llama ride through the mountains.
And the slapstick is pretty minimal. I mean, yes, there is a little bit like, oh, he can't ride the llama properly, or, oh, the bridge is falling apart, he has to get to the other side, but there's not much slapstick in this. The reason I don't like it that much is that it's somewhat boring for a Donald cartoon, and, not much happens other than he goes, he visits.
Because the thing with this is that a lot of the slapstick and humor seems kind of forced. Because with Donald, he's very easy to throw physical humor at. It comes naturally to him because that's just his character.
And he'll react to it the way he always does. Rah, you crazy kids!
Right.
Yelling and angry.
Right. In which this case, a lot of stuff happens that like I said, feels really forced. Like him looking down a bridge and all of a sudden, oh my God, he's falling off the bridge. It's like, really?
And he doesn't react to it. Like, not in the usual way, at least. And it doesn't feel like a Donna cartoon.
Yeah, so kind of lackluster, and this one scene where this boy is playing a flute to make a llama dance just goes on way too long. So, definitely, it's not my least favorite, but it's still really not that good.
Yeah, and then we have Pedro, which is basically JJ the jet plane if he was stripped of all personality. Seriously, this cartoon is about a small jet plane, or biplane, or whatever it is, and he has to deliver mail across the mountains and then fly back.
Right.
That is the premise of the cartoon. They're like, oh, hey, the planes look cool, let's draw that. And he has to deliver mail. But this evil mountain face has to stop him. and I'm just like, planes do this all the time, right? It's not that hard to deliver mail.
Right. The thing that apparently makes this journey very arduous is the fact that they have to cross over this very mountainous terrain that separates Chile from Argentina. And that wouldn't be bad, except that there's just this big, huge demon mountain that
it has a face.
Yes, and it does indeed look scary as hell. So
it looks like when I see it, I'm just like, Zool, motherfucker, Zool.
And apparently this thing has powers and is able to manipulate the weather.
This mountain is actively trying to hit him with the lightning.
Yes. Yes, because apparently any plane that gets close enough to it, it hurls lightning at it, and all of a sudden this huge storm appears out of nowhere. So that's the big conflict in this.
And most of it is just like apparently it's chronicling his journey through this, and I'm just like, just deliver the mail already. He's going to make it. We all know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And it lingers on, like, it's so much fluff in this. There's so much padding, and it lingers on minor points way too long.
Right. And on top of that, like, this is supposed to take place in Chile, because the plane starts in Chile with his mother and father, and then goes over the mountain terrain to Argentina, and then back again. But here's the thing. We don't see a single cultural reference to Chile.
We don't even see chili peppers. There's no Red Hot Chili Peppers. There's no Red Hot Chili Peppers, the band. Like, I feel gypped.
You're silly. So yeah, what I was saying before, this right here is actually my least favorite cartoon, because at least Lake Titicaca showed the culture and the people and everything. In this one, you're basically looking at a predecessor to Cars, except with planes.
Yeah, like I said, JJ the Jet Plane, if it was uninteresting, and if they narrated everything to us. The characters don't talk.
Right, yeah,
it's just this announcer guy. He's like, will he make it?
Yeah.
Find out in 5 seconds.
Yeah, I should mention something about the narrator. There's this one narrator. He talks throughout all the cartoons, pretty much. I think except for the last one. And this guy gets way too into the cartoons. Like, he gets, like, way too overexcited, and it's like, dude, chill the fuck out.
It's like, oh my god, Chile! Like, we're here. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to... this guy, he's... Yeah.
No, like, here's a segment where it says, so Pedro's flying through the clouds. Oh, look out for that cloud now. Oh, yeah, he dodged that like a pro. Oh my god, it's the great big mountain. But don't worry.
What will he do? He sneaks past with a cloud.
Right. And now Pedro is flying back. He's so confident. Look out! Oh, that was a close one.
He dropped the mail. Oh no, he caught it, even though he has wings and not hands, and doesn't put it inside his body. Like, I don't understand the physics of, like, moving, talking airplanes. Well, they don't even talk, so, like, living airplanes, but he still has storage space inside him. We see the cockpit at one point.
Right. I also like the subtle sexism that is placed in that cartoon, because Pedro has a mother and father plane. The father plane is one of those really big military-type planes whose job is to deliver the mail. And his mother is a smaller, more feminine plane whose job is not listed at all. And then when the father plane gets sick, the choice becomes the dilemma is who's going to deliver the mail. And they say, well, the mama plane can't do it because she has high oil pressure. And it's like, dude, don't lie to us. Just say that she's a woman. Because that's basically what they're implying.
Yeah.
Because after passing over her, they say, well, Pedro must do it, even though he's a much smaller plane, should not be able to fly as high up, and this is his first flight.
It's just like, this is an issue of, blatant misogynistic tendencies, and I really don't think it's Disney's fault. I mean, this was going on all the time at this time period.
Right.
So, it is a product of its times, but it is kind of blatant. It's in your face. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't add to an already pretty weird film.
Yeah, and we're not the only ones who didn't like this. Apparently Chile didn't like this either. Which is understandable considering that they showed none of the culture or the people and made it basically a really childish cartoon about a sentient plane.
And really, it's not about Chile. It's about Argentina because they're bringing mail to Argentina.
Yeah, the only thing they mention is this one statue that sits in the mountainside that separates the border of Chile and Argentina. But other than that, you really get nothing of the Chilean culture. In fact, this cartoon disappointed this cartoonist. His name was René Rios Boteguer, and he decided, I can do better than this. So he actually came up with his own version of the jet plane called Condorito. And it's actually an ongoing cartoon right now, an ongoing comic strip, which, from what I heard, is a lot better than Pedro.
Take that, Pedro, and JJ the Jet Plane.
Yes.
So yeah, Pedro was not good. I didn't like it, but see, the thing is, it was a little bit interesting, at least, With me, I didn't like the other cartoon more because it was boring, and it was just kind of blah. But I can see why this cartoon was not good. But next we do have the only good saving grace in this film, which is El Gaucho Goofy.
Yes.
Goofy makes everything 10 times better.
Too true.
And so, yeah, this cartoon is about Goofy. He's a gaucho, or a cowboy, as you will.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, gauchos are basically a South American version of a cowboy.
And they're the people that, you see in those bandit films. They have the ponchos on like the blanket over their heads and the cowboy hats kind of thing.
Yeah, the ponchos, the sombreros, and they ride their horses with these many layers of fabrics. Yeah, those are gauchos.
Yeah, you see him all the time in like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, those type of films. And so it's basically Goofy. He's a gaucho, and it's basically a how-to Goofy film on how to be a gaucho. And it is funny. I find it really funny. I mean, it's not as interesting as other Goofy how-to stuff, but, it made me smile. I thought it was well worth a watch.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have Goofy being Goofy, but at the same time, you're getting an education about the life of a gaucho. So it really does come full circle. I mean, it's not the best how-to Goofy cartoon, but it's still very entertaining to watch.
And it is very informative, It actually represents the Argentinian culture a lot better than Pedro did.
Yes, most definitely. I mean, true, they don't show much of the Argentinian cities or the people like Lake Titicaca did, but gauchos really are a part of their cultural heritage, so they did at least hit the mark on that in terms of cultural reference.
But still, I don't know how much it relates to the actual like stuff that happens before the cartoon.
Right. And it should be noted here that they actually show Goofy lighten up. He's actually smoking a cigarette in this one.
And is this the first time we really hear him talk?
No, this isn't the first time. And actually, an interesting background for the how-to Goofy cartoons. The whole reason that these segments started was because the original voice actor of Goofy joined the strike that was going on at the time. So, in order to compensate for his absence and to keep making cartoons to bring the money in, they decided to make a how-to session featuring Goofy, but having a narrator talk over him.
And it works for a lot of it. And in this one, for the most part, he doesn't say anything until the very end, and that's why I noticed his voice actor is a bit different.
Right, because I think the times you do hear him talk, it's reused clips of previous cartoons. So they probably did have someone step in maybe for one or two lines. There is a bit of a noticeable difference, but not much. But it's still very entertaining, and it is definitely my favorite cartoon of the bunch in here.
For me, it's the only saving grace in this thing, and the first two things are either boring or just, flat out just insulting to the culture. And just, they're not fun to watch. But this is El Gaucho Goofy is a good cartoon.
Right.
And then the last one we have to talk about is Hold on. It's Aquarela do Brasil, or Watercolor of Brazil. And basically, it starts off kind of like... It's kind of trying to be a cartoon version of Fantasia for the first bit, where they have watercolors, a person painting a watercolor painting, and it showcases like stuff that he's painting, and then it morphs into a new image.
Yeah.
In time with the music. And it starts off interesting, but it quickly devolves into something that's just kind of like, what the hell did I just see?
Pretty much, because it starts off with, a paintbrush is painting a scenery, and then it slaps some blue paint, and all of a sudden it turns into a waterfall. And a bunch of other sequences like this happens as well, as it's drawing a pine tree. The pine tree becomes the tail of a bird. It draws this bundle of bananas, throws some black paint on it, becomes a bunch of toucans, and that's pretty cool to watch.
Until one part where I think it was like a bird or something turns into Donald.
No, it was a flower. Because first they create a bee, then they create this really weird-looking flower. The bee flies into the flower, the thing convulses, and all of a sudden turns into Donald.
And I'm just like, okay, you lost me. Like, what?
It's like, okay, you had a nice artistic piece going on, and then you throw Donald Duck in there? Why?
And, this is another one of these Disney acid trip sequences. Happens every single film, and this entire cartoon is an acid trip, just seeing random things turn into random things, and that turning into Donald was weird.
Yes, very so. And then it leads to the introduction of a new character. Everyone meets Jose Carioca. He is a green parrot, and probably the most popular character in Brazil at the moment in terms of Disney.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and he's pretty fun. He basically what he does is he teaches a little bit about dancing, and he teaches them the samba.
Yeah, and he also apparently possesses black magic, as he can do all sorts of things that when Donald tries to mimic, he finds that he can't do.
Like, he uses Donald's hat as an accordion.
Yeah, and then he uses his umbrella as a flute.
And Donald cannot do this.
Yeah,
and so what I take from this cartoon is that all Brazilian parrots are magicians.
It is quite possible.
I thought it was kind of interesting up until the second half of the cartoon.
Right, because the character of Jose, he's not bad, but he's not,
he's bland.
He is kind of bland, at least in comparison to Donald.
Even Donald in this still doesn't have his actual personality.
Right.
He's not acting Donald. He's not, screaming and hollering. He's just like, okay, what's going on? He's not even as, reacting as he should to seeing something like this. It's almost like he's the one on acid, and this is what he's seeing. And so it's different. And then it kind of just abruptly ends.
Right, because the sole purpose of bringing Jose to life was to introduce Donald to the samba, and then that's it. And,
they dance for a bit, some trippy things happen, they sit down, they start drinking something, and the film ends. And I'm just like, that's it? You're not going to do anything more with, the artist? You're not going to show, oh, this is what we learned after everything?
Yeah, because this is another segment where, again, they don't show much of the culture. Because obviously this takes place in Brazil, which is a beautiful country. both in terms of its city and its wildlife. And they show a lot of the beauty of the wildlife in the beginning with the paintbrush painting the scenery. But then when it gets to the city, the most you see of it is a cafe and the Copacabana.
And you see a girl with fruit on her head dancing.
In silhouette.
Yes, and it's like, we don't meet any of the people of Brazil. We don't see any of the culture of Brazil. This doesn't really represent Brazil that well. I mean, they went there. They could have captured so much. And instead, they're like, oh, hey, let's do Fantasia only on the cheap, and then make Donald dance the samba. That's pretty much how this production went on. We're going to go here. We're going to do things on the cheap. We're not going to represent the culture accurately. I mean, and when we do show the culture, we'll do it like a historical documentary.
Pretty much. And actually, once I watched it, like going over everything in my head, I really think that they should have kept Watercolor Brazil. They should have made that the beginning of the piece.
Introduce you know what? Make it not about the animators.
Right.
Introduce Donald to the equation when you start that, and it's like, okay, he's being created by this watercolor painting, and he meets Jose, and he's going to take him on a tour of the area, and he's going to show him the culture. He's going to show him the people of the various countries. Or, even better yet, just make it about Brazil. Just make it about one country. Focus your time and effort.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like, they could have had this whole thing done from Donald's point of view, or from, just a bunch of, or maybe even have Jose tell him stories that he's been told about the different countries. Just, basically, just cut out all of the human interaction, because it is needless, and it's really like it breaks the flow of all the cartoons, because they really do not segue that well into each other. Mm-hmm. Just have this be, Donald visits South America. He meets a resident of there. The resident tells him about the culture, and then takes him around to show him the different wakes of life at the different parts of South America. That would have been possibly a decent film.
But what we're given is very disjointed, very unorganized, and could have worked better as just individual cartoons, maybe. In the case of some, no. But I would like to see El Gaucho Goofy as just a regular cartoon.
Well, it is a cartoon on its own, because even though it did premiere in this movie, since then it's been its own cartoon on other DVD releases and cartoon collaborations. So obviously it can hold up on its own.
Everything else, unfortunately, no. And it wasn't. I don't think Saludos Amigos was well done. I don't think it was well handled. I don't think it was well edited. I think it's a jumbled creation, and it didn't work the way it was intended to. However, I will give it this: it is not the Reluctant Dragon. It did not offend me. I don't think it was like really offensive to the people in the culture. I just don't think it accurately represented them. It didn't showcase them in the limelight. And I just think the biggest thing it does is it's boring.
Pretty much. I mean, it could have done so much more, but it didn't. And it really is a shame. But it's not that bad, because if it was really bad, I don't think that the South American people would have liked it as much as they did.
Yeah, I mean, it does do some things right. It's not like an entirely horrible creation, so it does. I can give it some credits, but for the most part, I would not recommend seeing this. It's not something that's essential for everyone to see. I mean, if you want to see some culture, if you want to see El Gaucho Goofy, yeah, go see it. That's some of the good parts of it. But in terms of Disney canon and all the stuff that we watched, it's not necessary. Like Snow White, that's something I want everyone to see. Everyone should see Snow White. Everyone should see Pinocchio. Everyone should see Fantasia. The Reluctant Dragon can go die in fire. And then, everyone should see Dumbo and Bambi. But this is not an essential film.
It really isn't, and it's actually confusing as to why it's considered a classic, because really there's nothing about it that, qualifies as it being classic, other than the fact that they introduced a character. Yeah, other than the fact that they introduced a character that would later on be popular in that country. That's pretty much it. Because Jose Carioca is pretty popular down there, and he does make another appearance in the next film we're going to review after this, which is Three Caballeros.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's actually much more developed and is more, centralized than he is in this film. And he does make one or two appearances later on, I think in House of Mouse cartoons, and there is a comic about him. So obviously he does have his own canon in term of Disney, because they even have a mascot of him down at Epcot and Disney World. If you go to the Mexico section, you'll see him in Paquito there, and they take you on a tour of the Mexico region in search of Donald.
Mm-hmm. It's just, for this film, this is one of two films we've seen so far, which I've just, skip it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't give it a watch.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you're a Disney fan, you want to see it just to say that you saw it, go ahead. But I suggest just go on YouTube, look up the individual cartoons, and keep it at that, because really you're not missing anything in between. It's just pointless filming of the human artists, and that's it. It's really nothing. You want to see parts of Brazil, watch the History Channel, watch documentaries on it. You'll see much better
Go to
depictions.
Brazil yourself.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. But, yeah, this is definitely one that you should skip. But on to the second film that we viewed for today, which is also kind of, in that same vein. Victory Through Airpower was a very different idea. Right from the start, I'm just like, okay, so we're going to make a movie about the history of aviation and showing us how to win World War II and make it into a Disney film. Right. And this one is based on a book, but it's not a children's book.
No, this was written by a man who was in the Army. He fought in the previous war. He lost his leg, but he still continued to work, in terms of military strategy, and, worked on aviation equipment and science, and eventually, through his own knowledge of military tactics, discovered a way that America can win the war through using airplanes.
Mm-hmm. So, hence Victory Through Airpower.
Right, and
I cannot stress this enough. They stress air power with every single fiber of this film. By the end of it, I'm just like, okay, I get it. Airplanes are cool. Yes, but you made your point half an hour ago. And this is an 1 and 10-minute long film.
Right, but it feels much longer when they get to that part.
And it's just like, okay, I liked the first half of it. The history of aviation was actually well told. It was half cartoon, half... Well, it was a different style of animation. It was a little bit cartoony and a little bit not, but it was funny. It was fun, and it was interesting because, some of the stuff I hadn't known about. Like, everyone knows about Wilbur and Orville Wright, but there's some stuff that they talked about that I didn't know about, and it was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but then again, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to, enlighten people on part of the history, because not only did they show the Wright brothers and how they developed the first airplane, but how they got it patented, how they inspired other people to make their own airplanes, how they introduced it to the military, how the military eventually realized that it was essential as part of their battle strategies in winning the war,
and how they developed like the machine gun, where it, instead of shooting, it actually shoots through the propeller, but it's timed so that it doesn't hit the propeller.
Exactly. So that part is really fascinating, and
But
they show you the development of how the plane eventually got bigger, was able to go longer distance, was able to go at a much faster pace until it got to the point where it was in the 40s.
and from an aviation standpoint, it is fascinating seeing like this age of aviation, everyone trying new things and new methods of trying to be able to fly, and seeing how it grew. But then again, okay, this is a Disney film. Disney is typically marketed towards kids. I think a kid would either find this boring or just be like, would be too young to be into it,
Or might possibly could be traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of what they show in the film is air raid attacks. Airplanes bombing ships, airplanes shooting at each other, or throwing bombs down on cities and factories and all that. And it actually gets pretty graphic. I mean, there's no dead bodies or
there's no blood or anything,
but you see the physical destruction of these buildings blowing up, of there being flames and smoke and all this devastation. And watching it, I realized that there's no way that a cartoon, not even the Disney company could get away with this today, because showing them, showing even a cartoon plane dropping bombs on a city would still be the equivalent as if someone, did an animated version of 9/11.
Right after, and this is during the war. People
Yes.
are already frightened. It's already during the major war times.
Right.
And nothing major has happened on American soil just yet. But this is right before Pearl Harbor.
No, this was after Pearl Harbor.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, they actually even show a segment where Pearl Harbor gets bombed. And that's what made me think of, wow, they would never be able to get away with this shit today, because this was released in 1943. This was 2 years after Pearl Harbor got bombed and America was thrown into the war.
And so, in that case, it's just like, okay, people have just lived through this stuff. Adults who watch the history of aviation will either know this stuff, or, because they lived through it, or they'll find it boring. The kids might find it boring, or, they won't get into it. Mm-hmm. And I don't think either of them would appreciate, seeing images of this stuff right after these places have been bombed. In wartime, there's a reason why they had these happy radio shows and happy programs, because nobody wanted to relive the war.
Right, because a lot of the cartoons being made at the time, because Disney had to do this as well, was they had to make uplifting cartoons featuring, our favorite cartoon characters, being in the army or finding ways to help out the armies, and it was supposed to be lighthearted and, make people say, yeah, America's great. We're going to do everything we can to support the war, and blah, 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 blah. Propaganda. And this one, it starts off lighthearted, but then it quickly becomes dark, and
it kind of drags on. Like the history of aviation stuff, it starts to get into the recent period, and it's just like, okay, people have lived this stuff. Even kids would be like, okay, that just happened. And two, it's just like it's sort of unnecessary. I'm just like, okay, for the first half of the film, excluding maybe the recent history, people would watch that. I don't know who you'd market it to at that time, but, maybe teenagers, would find that interesting. Like, hey, Airpower, planes, that's interesting. Let me research on that, and let me, want to be an aviator. Mm-hmm. But I don't really see the rest of this film being like, who are you going to market it to?
Right. I mean, I guess for history buffs, this would, be an insight into what people were thinking at the time, what they thought would work well for, in terms of military tactics of how to, defeat the Germans and Japanese with the equipment that they had. But other than that, in today's society, that would not fly at all, especially given the advancements in our technology, and those tactics would now be extremely outdated.
Mm-hmm. Especially because I keep thinking, like, they keep hammering and hammering about how, okay, planes are superior. planes are better than ground defenses. We learned this pretty early on in that time period. Like, planes, I think planes were still used in the beginning of, like, at the end of World War One, and we saw, they were using gases and using poison and stuff like that. And we can tell that ground defenses are outdated, but they just keep hammering home this message that, we can't attack directly, we can't use tanks, we can't use naval superiority because planes are better and because submarines are better. And, there are other tactics, though. They didn't mention the atomic bomb because I assume either they didn't want to talk about it or people didn't know about it.
Right.
But, we had other techniques, try something different. Try time travel. Try something else. But not, everything isn't just about planes.
I mean, it was probably considered the most advanced technology at the time, hence why, they put so much emphasis on it. But like I said, the message just gets old and repetitive, and you just, like, stop paying attention after a while and are, like, looking at the clock saying, okay, when can we get back to the cartoon now? I'd rather be watching animated bombs drop on cities than listen to this guy talk.
Or a guy in a biplane throw a brick at a German dude. That was pretty funny.
That was funny.
And it's just like the 40-minute mark hits, and it's just like, okay, history lesson over. We're going to tell you exactly how this war is supposed to be won. We're going to preach to you. It's not considering, like, okay, what if this happens? Like, no, it's like planes are the only answer. Planes are everything. And it's just like, this guy who's telling you this is somewhat different from the narrator and the other segments. And so he's less enthused. Like I said, he's a Russian, which is very ironic, and he just has no energy.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really blame him because the poor guy, he was hurt in the war, he has a wooden leg, and Disney wanted this. He kind of was conscious, that people wouldn't pay attention to an old guy, sitting down talking to the audience like he was lecturing a classroom. So he tried to make the guy, get up, walk around, pull down maps, show globes and all that stuff.
They were showing diagrams and, like, showing, okay, this is what happened, this is what Hitler did. And just once again, I wonder who you would market this to because, okay, adults have their own opinions on how this war is supposed to be won, and a lot of them may not even want to have anything to do with the war. Kids won't care at all.
Right. Like I said,
this would market this to.
This would, at the time period, it was supposed to, I guess, be marketed toward people and people with military power in order to convince them, to pawn their resources and put it toward this. But in terms of today, you could probably cut off the last 30 minutes and keep the first 40, and then it would just be, historical significance, up to a certain point.
And that would be fun. I would, people could show it in their history classes, or people can, watch it for fun. The thing is, I don't think this would be something that you would show in theaters. Like,
right.
The Reluctant Dragon was pushing it in terms of, showing this in theaters. But this, I don't even know. Like, it's not, again, this is not as bad as The Reluctant Dragon was. It's not offensive. It's just really, really boring at a point. But I'm just like, you wouldn't put this in theaters.
Well, the thing was, from what I've read, is that it only got one re-release, and that was during the war, and then it was pretty much stored away in the vault for more than 60 years until it was released on DVD with a whole bunch of other war cartoons and other World War II related propaganda stuff that Disney was doing at the time. And this was mostly, a history collection for both Disney buffs and for, World War II enthusiasts. That's pretty much the only significance it has. But it was kept away for the longest time because it was actually deemed offensive to both Germans and the Japanese, and in some small way it was actually offensive to the French and the English because it was made them look like, that they were too overconfident in their
It was the classic French stereotype, like, oh, we're not good enough, and our rose line is superior, and it's not. And it was kind of offensive. I wouldn't say it's like racially
because
offensive.
they don't show any of the people outside of, Americans and maybe one French and one German guy. But that was mostly, in fun.
Mm-hmm.
But they never really showed any, specific cultural people, like, attacking each other. It's mostly just dark figures in army uniform.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that, that they were demonizing the Germans and Japanese so much and then making the French and the English seem like, they're going to lose this war because they're not using air power and da-da-da-da-da.
And again, it's very preachy. It's like, we have to use this specific method. No other way will work. Mm-hmm. War isn't like that. In war, you listen to your counsel. You have people giving different ideas. And so, when this film started off on the cut of the film that I have, it starts off with a person saying, it's not actually part of the Victory Through Airpower film. It's introducing the film, and it's like, this is Disney's most unconventional film.
That's a nice way of putting it.
And it's just like, yeah, you're no kidding.
It's not completely a pointless film, though, because true, it's extremely dated and preachy, but it was because of this film that people in both the American government and the English government decided that, hey, maybe we should use our most powerful military force possible, put on our resources, and see what happens. So it did get the message across. And
it didn't do it in the right way. You know what? If it was split into two halves, into two different properties, mm-hmm. I think it would be better. Market the aviation stuff, the history of aviation, to the masses. Mm-hmm. Say, hey, this is what planes are like, and people would buy it. Right. And then put the other half and send it to the government.
Yeah, and in terms of this film, I think this would have been better if it was disjointed, like a bunch, like Saludos Amigos was with its 4 different cartoons. This should have been, I think, 2 different cartoons, or at least segments. One with the history that can be marketed somewhat toward the kids, but at the same time gave you an education and kept your attention and, gave you a whole, perception of what aviation went through to get to where it is today. And then, have the other part for history buffs and people in the military who maybe want to, brush up on their tactics and, the history of I forgot that word.
Aviation.
Yep. Right, and brush up on their aviation history.
And so, overall, from both of these 2 films, what do you think, Kat?
These 2 for me are definite skips. They're really not worth the time to watch. Not worth the attention to watch, in my opinion. I mean, they're good in terms of, of history, of culture, of, the mindset of people at the time. But in terms of entertainment, I really was not entertained by either film that much. I chuckled maybe once or twice at a certain cartoon or a certain part of the film, but honestly, like this, I would not, be sad if I never saw these films again.
Yeah, I mean, they don't feel like the Disney films that we've been seeing for a while. I mean, there's no really musical scores. There's nothing in Victory Through Airpower. And Saludos Amigos, what little I could find about the music, I mean, it's pretty background stuff.
Yeah, I think, the songs for Saludos Amigos was, just people singing in the background.
Yeah, it's not like a Disney score where you can talk about it. Right. And so, the stories, there really wasn't very much story in terms of, like, what a Disney film would be like. And, I would say skip Saludos Amigos, but watch El Gaucho Goofy and watch the first half of Victory Through Airpower. If you don't like the first half, then you're not going to like the rest of the film. So at least just watch the first half, maybe. But for the most part, they are very skippable.
Yeah, definitely. So
this is the start of the dark part of the 1940s, And from here on, we have a lot of these either mix of live action and animation, or just flat out weird films.
Yeah, definitely. Like the next one, as I mentioned previously, the next one on our list is Three Caballeros, and this one, oh man. Well,
if you thought we had an acid trip before.
This is basically what Saludos Amigos should have been, like what critics said, because they actually do it in the right way, where they have Donald get introduced to the Latin culture and have him journey throughout different parts, meeting the people, going to the places, and basically absorbing everything. So they did that right. However, there's this movie, at least the second half, major acid trip. I do not recommend doing drugs or drinking when you see this, or if you do, have someone in the room, because you might have a really big freak out.
But yeah, I haven't seen the Three Caballeros yet, but we will talk about that next time. Thank you guys for watching. This has been the Disney Debate for today. If you have any comments, criticisms, suggestions, or anything else, please leave them at zenithrule.blip.tv, or you can follow us at twitter.com/zenithrule or twitter.com/EphraimTRabbit, or you can follow us at facebook.com/zenithrule and facebook.com/catback.
Yep. And we will see you next time for the Disney Debate. I'm Ephraim T. Rabbit /Cat T. Critic /Catmac.
And I'm Zenith Rule, and we'll see you next time.
TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Thank you for watching the Media Meltdown. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. And if you like what you see, show your support on the Patreon page at patreon.com/Media Meltdown. See you all next time on the Media Meltdown.